So throughout this whole Brexit process, we've seen fishing really get far too much attention than it actually really deserves. And you may remember back in December, all the hoo-ha and hullabaloo of not only the Brexiteers, but Brexit supporters were making about how important fishing was, about how Boris shouldn't betray the fishermen, about how this was an actually wonderful fishing industry, how it was going to be revived, and it was all going to be, sunshine and rainbows from here on out. Turns out, not the case. Indeed, now the government is actually trying to give them money to help them export. But the thing is, that money isn't going to last long. And it is only very temporary because, again, the government is desperate to try and smooth over as much of these problems as they possibly can. And in the usual conservative mind thinking of, we'll throw some money at it and in the short term, it'll work, it'll keep these fishermen quiet. Again, for how long and how successful that will be, probably not. But remember, this was an industry that to our GDP is worth something like 0.01%. That is how much the British fishing industry contributes to our economy. And remember, that was when we were in the EU. That was when it was all working fine in the single market, in the customs union, in the common fisheries policy. It worked. And as we've said multiple times before, the big problems with the UK fishing industry were never, ever a cause, to the EU, caused by the EU. They were always caused by the British government for basically failing to support ports and, stuff in the fishing and coastal areas. So it was always a UK problem, not an EU one. And as a result, these problems that British fishermen face because of Brexit have gotten worse, and the problems that they were facing, that they were complaining about, are not going to go away. They're probably only going to get worse. But as we've said before, this the whole Brexit scenario is going to be absolutely disastrous for multiple industries. And today we're talking about the fashion industry, because the fashion industry, again, if fishing is allowed to have all this support and all this extra money it's getting to help them import and export, then why isn't an industry like the fashion industry that is worth far more to our GDP not getting the same amount of attention? So today we're going to jump into an article from the Yorkshire Post, but before we do that, please do remember to hit the like, share and subscribe button. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page where you can help me and support the channel that way. Or you can buy me a coffee from the one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee. And thank you to all those people that do support me that way. And now, so this one comes from the Yorkshire Post, as we said, and the title is, My Sector Didn't Have a Voice. The call for fashion to be supported as much as fishing through Brexit and the coronavirus. So it started from the rich and interwoven history of textiles in Yorkshire from the 18th century, when the region stood at the forefront with its countless cotton and wool mills. What's going on here? So many newspapers, so many local and regional newspapers have so awfully mobile terrible sites. I'm sorry, but they just do. So, countless cotton and wool mills, and now, hundreds of years on, producers are attempting to recapture that spirit, to reinvigorate the fashion industry, starting in Yorkshire with a focus on sustainability. The North has become a hotbed for the headquarters of fast fashion brands, from Boohoo in the style to Misguided. Again, never heard of them, but I'm not really into fashion. And the chairman of the Commons Committee examining the impact of fast fashion on the environment and working conditions of staff said that the North and the Midlands were also where the majority of processing and productions of garments also take place too. However, experts say there is now a pivotal time for fashion, and that with the government support, Yorkshire, the North and the UK can restore its proud reputation for producing some of the world's best quality garments. Now this obviously feeds into the whole, quote, level up system, because again, this could create hundreds, if not thousands of jobs in this region. That, of course, as we've said before, the two big ideas are at war, the level up and global Britain. And here's the thing, neither can work without undermining the other. So, it continues, the Centre for Retail Research, or the CRR, found that nearly 180,000 retail jobs were lost in the UK in 2020 as the coronavirus lockdowns took hold, and it predicts a further 200,000 will go in 2021. But this is combined with soaring sales for online retailers, prompting calls for support and reframing. Tara Clinic, the founder and chief and the executive of the apolitical Fashion Roundtable think tank, said it was time for ministers to show the same amount of support for fashion as they have for sectors such as fishing and film. My sector didn't have a voice, said Miss Clinic, who previously worked for Labour MP Sharon Hodgson and has been in the fashion industry for over 20 years. Pointing to the film industry, she said that government support had helped the sector to flourish, with film studios being built in Reading and Dagenham. And she said that with Brexit and the coronavirus having a big impact on the sector, it was now time for the industry to speak out. I think there's been a problem historically with this sector. It either basically just hasn't engaged, or it's just told the ministers what they think and want to hear. And ultimately, that is not going to lead you towards getting taxation support and incentives to produce here. It won't, she said. The film industry kicked back, and fishing's kicked back, and got over 23 million out of the government in January to help support exports, and it makes a fraction of the money that fashion does. According to the Office for National Statistics, fishing was worth about 437 million to the UK economy in terms of GDP, while fashion came in at 35 billion. She then went on to say, this is a fantastic industry, but it will soon be on its knees. Catherine West, the Labour MP for Hornsey and Wood Green, is an all-chair member of the all-party parliamentary committee for the ethics and sustainability in fashion, and said it was time the government took the issue seriously. It is not good enough just to say that we'll start making Topshop jeans in Wakefield, she said, especially for small brands. They need a lot of support, and the Brexit bureaucracy, there's still quite a lot of help that needs to be brought in for the small businesses. Ruby Cowan, who makes sustainable hand-stitched leather bags and accessories for her Headbridge studio, said that support for small business was the biggest hurdle. I feel like it's very hard to be a self-employed. They don't nurture people for who they are, she said. And it can suffocate people. And then, often in school, nobody is really taught about being self-employed in school. That would be really good to encourage people to start their own little thing, really. She went on to say, but when you're starting something and you want to be sustainable, it'd be really good if there was more grants for people to help do things like that, because there is a lot of money to put into it, into something, and it is very difficult to start up something like that. It's almost near impossible. Miss Kerry said she had worked multiple jobs to pull together the funding to start her venture, but added, it'd be good if there were schemes out there for starting up sustainable brands. Well, there was a fund in the EU, but of course we don't have that. But of course the government said that they would replace that. And of course they haven't. Surprise, surprise. Part of the issue, Miss Clinic said, was that the government's departments wished to take responsibility for fashion, and she suspected that it may be down to machismo about which industries were important. I'm emailing someone going, I'm actually not sure if it's your department or another department. I would love to see a minister that was purely responsible for that. I think if we're going to re-evolve the civil service, it would not be in the way that Dominic Cummings might like. It would be sector-led, so one minister per sector, really addressing that, because at the moment fashion sits between several departments. It's not if it's not sustainable, it's DEFRA. If it's not if it's trade, it's over there, and I don't know how that all works. Miss West echoed this and added, I really don't think the government understands the potential, but I also don't think the industry has a voice. The fallout from Brexit has prompted the Fashion Roundtable to write to the government in February to ask for more help. In a reply, the Culture Secretary Oliver Dowden and Small Business Consumers and the Labour Markets Minister Paul Scully told Mrs Click that at the time the UK's offer to fashion proposals is significantly more generous than many EU state members. But she followed up by saying that the Brexit conversation underpins everything. The work we do outlines 2 or 3 strategies, which really are up to the UK government, not up to the EU. The VAT retail export scheme is not up to the EU, it's a UK-only decision. That decision not to have garment workers on a shortage occupation list is a UK decision. I'm really worried for the conversations we're having and the policy leaders in modern slavery space that Brexit is a massive opportunity for trafficking into those low-paid jobs. She added, there's been so many challenges for the businesses trying to import and export from the EU since Brexit, and it's really been challenging for them. Make it British, they say. I've had 63% increase in the last few months of people wanting to produce here. But we need the infrastructure to actually support them. The fact is that, first of all, let's start with the workers. If they're not on the shortage occupation list, then we're not training them. I think the government needs to understand that they get the vision for what they're going to do and how they're going to tackle the challenges of the Brexit conversation and support for micro businesses. And then we can have the larger policies about innovation and circularity. Miss West also added, the policymakers should be thinking about this now, because we know that the coronavirus is basically going to cripple the industry. So I think having a big shift now is necessary, but it's the timing that needs to be important. And as long as we get over the coronavirus, I think the adjustment could be very painful. She urged the government to take a 2-pronged approach to supporting the development at home while also looking at European trade. The government's got to keep trade with Europe going at the same time as supporting, in any way it can, the indigenous industry, so that you've almost got on a parallel track. Ms Click also added that pre-COVID lockdown, they were growing at 11%. The creative industries were just massive. I think the car industries would dream of those figures. So what are we saying about the work of women and work of people who are not in a bunch of macho jobs? What we're saying, because of those 2 things, because actually they're not jobs for the future. And I think all the parties need to understand that that if they really want to understand the jobs of the future, they are not necessarily aviation, automobiles, or fishing. Already too much of the industry was, quote, tech savvy and ready for the digital revolution. And she said that the whole sector was ready and psychologically ready for predicting the trends and behaviour. I think the government needs to understand that while we're already ahead on so many of these issues, they need to stop looking after the 19th century jobs and start to cost the 21st century. Because if you want to build back better, you absolutely need to make sure and get what that really means. She added that sustainability and the COP26 and the G7 leadership, I would imagine, is what the government wants to see about the Build Back Green agenda. Should be run through every piece of policy, and that includes support for the fashion industry. So, as you can see, very clearly, after COVID, I think you are going to get a lot of industries be absolutely crying out for what the government has done, because Brexit has took massive chunks massive chunks out of their revenue streams because they can no longer export to Europe as easily as they could. There is now increased costs for sending stuff there and also buying in materials from Europe as well. This is going to cause huge problems. And like I said, we've said multiple times before, all industries through up and down the UK are going to be hugely affected, not just by the coronavirus and the outcomes that the government basically just aren't doing, and they're also going to be hitting a double whammy because of Brexit as well. So we are just walking into an absolute perfect storm. And I worry that because we already suffered a coronavirus recession, indeed one of the worst recessions out of all the other countries in Europe, we had a 21% drop, where the next closest was 13. That's an incredible amount to lose. And I really worry that it's going to be very obvious that when we try to get back, you're going to see other countries, especially in Europe, just start flying ahead. And I think you're just going to see the UK economy stagnate. I think it's barely going to see any significant growth. And I think we're just going to be trapped in complete stagnation. But as always, let me know what you think. And as always, do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there is a link to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, we'll see you all next time.